He brought me Robin Hood, and I read it, and I just became fascinated. I work on on the television show Arrow. The other part of my job is I have an archery school, Lykopis Archery. We're the only school, I believe, we're the only school that teaches what we teach, which will be broken down into something we call the 4 disciplines. So imagine if I gave you a rifle, and as soon as you look through the sight, your barrel disappeared. It's just like in America, in the United States, you guys call a flat bow a longbow, but I hesitate to say it's not. The bow in Finland that drew me there is an incredibly unique, it's a composite bow. It's a composite bow out of 2 woods. The number one question I get, Sam, is, how do you do at competition? And I'm like, that does not define archery. It's a stick, it's a string, and it's another stick, but here we are. And yeah, that rounds out my job pretty well. This is Patricia Gonsalves, and you're listening to Living Country in the City, episode 32.
Y'all ready for your dose of flyover state spirit? Straight from the concrete jungle? Well, put down your latte and pull on your boots. It's time for Living Country in the City.
Hey y'all, thanks for tuning in for episode 32 of Living Country in the City. If y'all haven't done so already, make sure you search for Living Country in the City on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to make absolutely sure that you don't miss out on any new episodes. Also, if you're already subscribing, I'd ask you to take a quick moment to leave a rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher. Now, I know these requests are really easy to ignore. I'm guilty of it too, just moving on and listening to the podcast. But however passionate I am about sharing new content with y'all every week, I can't do it without your help. And leaving that rating and review gives a huge boost to the podcast visibility and my ability to bring on new guests. Now, a huge thank you to everyone that's already taken the time to leave that rating and review. Y'all are as much a part of this podcast as I am. For the rest of y'all that haven't yet, head on over now. It's really easy to do, and y'all don't even need to pause the podcast while you're leaving that rating. Now, for episode 32, I'm taking a little more of a departure from my content focused more directly on hunting to talk a little bit about archery. I was introduced to today's guest, Patricia Gonsalves, by a friend with the Pasadena Roving Archers, one of the oldest archery clubs in the U.S., and the group that manages my local range in Lower Arroyo Park in Pasadena. Now, she's traveled the world studying forms of traditional or instinctual archery from countless different countries and time periods, and she currently serves as the archery trainer and consultant for the DC Comics shows Arrow, Flash, and Legends of Tomorrow, as well as being founder and head instructor of Lykopis Archery in British Columbia. Now, with the recent resurgence of traditional archery among hunters, I thought it would be very interesting to have her on. So, Patricia, thanks for hopping on the call with me today.
No problem. My pleasure.
So, why don't you give us just a little bit of an introduction about who you are, just in a little bit of your history with archery, how you got started in it.
How I got started. I love this story. Of course, I've told this story a lot. When I was younger, my father, he was a bit of a rebel. Gee, I wonder where I got that from. And we eventually moved onto a boat in Florida, and I didn't, obviously it's a boat. I'm not going to tell you what year it was, but it was before Wham. So there was no TV. I mean, there was no TV. So I got given books, and I listened to old time radio plays, but lots of books. And he brought me Robin Hood, and I read it, and I just became fascinated with the story, a lot more about the story than just the archery or the story of Robin Hood the outlaw. Like, sort of more about as I got older, it was a lot about what the political climate was at the time, why Robin was stealing from people like bishops who are from the church. And, as a kid, you're not ever told that the church did anything wrong, but here's this hero. So the whole political climate of it, and the whole aspect of there being 2 kings, and it just sort of expanded from there. I really wanted to learn archery. Of course, it turned into, may I have a bow, Dad? 50 million times. I don't know if you're a Simpsons fan, but right out of the may we have a pool. Can we have a pool, Dad? Can we have a bow, Dad? And he always used a joke that it was a good thing he didn't give me the 3 Musketeers first.
Oh, jeez.
That could have gone in. So I think part of what interested me about archery after reading Robin Hood is I realized that there was lots of other books with archery in them, but not as the main thing, like The Last of the Mohicans, The White Company by Conan Doyle, like all those, it was always there was a political climate or something more natural and instinctual about archery than anything else. And I started shooting at a pretty young age, and I haven't really stopped except for at points where there just was not an option to do archery. There was no archery range. I mean, this was before the gun movies, the shoot 'em up gun movies. This is before gun culture. So you could still go to the Sears catalog and purchase a bow out of the Sears catalog, which of course my dad was all too familiar with because I kept shoving them in his face. Like instead of being like the regular kid, I had like with circled toys, Star Wars toys. My Sears catalog was circled with different bows and arrows and targets and stuff like that. So that's pretty much how I got started. And whenever there was just no option to do archery, I never had my own bow until I bought it at 16. I just researched it as much as possible, and that was one of the bonuses to living on a boat is you're sort of in a different place all the time. So that gave me access to different libraries all the time. So it was I just never stopped from there. It's fascination.
So now, from growing up being a younger child obsessed with archery and then getting into it kind of in your teen years a little bit more, to now, what are you doing now with archery?
What do I do now? Well, first of all, I work on the television show Arrow, and on the show I have a sort of like a wide range of jobs. They call me an archery technician. So a lot of my job is constructing and repairing arrows and bows as they become damaged on the show, figuring out ways to make things safe. I train when we have anybody doing archery on the show, they need to, for safety reasons, they need to be trained on how to properly shoot the bow, as well as because we don't actually shoot arrows on the show, they're all CGI. So training someone to shoot arrows is completely different than training someone to actually dry fire a bow, which is shooting the bow without the arrow in it. I mean, that's a huge no-no in the archery world.
I was going to say, that's the opposite of everything
exactly.
You learn in any other safety class.
I much rather have a student or an actor or a stunt person who has not ever done archery before, because I had an actress, lovely young lady, honest, awesome young lady, Madison. She played Artemis last season, but she had training already, and she was actually trained by a friend of mine in LA, Jim McQuarrie at Pasadena Roving Archers. So when it came time for her to dry fire the bow, of course, Jim had drilled into her, no, no, no. And now I was like, yes, yes, yes. And she was like, I would be like, let go. And she'd go. And I'm like, no, you see, you're supposed to be a badass archer. Hesitating does not say, I am going to kick your ass. It says, ah! So that was a unique challenge. Like, it's always a challenge to sort of get people. First, you have to show them how to shoot, and then once you take that arrow away, they lose the line. So instead of being nice and straight right across, they end up doing this thing because there's
Weird.
No line to look down.
Cocked out elbows.
I mean, yeah, you shoot a gun, obviously, right? So do you shoot a gun?
I shoot some rifles and I shoot a compound bow.
Right. So imagine if I gave you a rifle and as soon as you look through the sight, your barrel disappeared and all you had was the little end of your sight at the end of your barrel, but your entire barrel was gone. And I'm like, go ahead, shoot that thing, like that's the thing. So training the actors is always interesting because you have to train them to do archery and then you have to kind of train them to undo archery and just imagine it in their head. Now, stunts is completely different when you're training a stunt person because you need to get to know the stunts. And I've spent the last 5 years really watching stunt coordination. I do martial arts anyway, different, not just archery, because we consider archery a martial art. It's just, it's really cool to watch how these guys and ladies work out the routines and the choreography and the speed that they have to go at. I mean, when you do sword fighting or any stick fighting, you do a lot of slow work. So do you know what that means? Like you just move very slowly, either by yourself or against an opponent, so you can learn how to anticipate hits when you're going at speed. Well, these people have to do this, but they don't hit. It's almost like dry firing the bow, right? It's like, yeah, I want you to, come across and do this awesome kick punch. and you watch it in slow motion, and then you realize that they got to do it fast and not actually hit each other. And then we're going to throw a bow into that mix. So a lot of the times when I'm teaching the stunt guys is just like any sort of physical movement when you're doing something like that is getting the right timing, because if you get the timing off, it's just like, say, parkour. If your timing is off when you make that jump, you're going to face plant or whatever. If you pretend to reach for the arrow and draw the bow against your striking movement, everything's going to end up looking herky-jerky. And there's some really good, there's actually good shows out there that you can see that, where the archery and the fighting ends up looking kind of awkward because there's been no. I like training the stunt guys. They're awesome fun to work with, and I think a lot of the times, and I don't know if you can put this on the air. I would maybe not. A lot of the times they get there and they think they're just going to stand there and shoot, and that's all they're going to do. And by 20 minutes in, they're like, I'm like, all right, let's go again. And they're like, oh, okay, because I get them to jump over stuff and obstacles and stuff and fight each other. So even I can figure out where those motions need to go into, and safely, so nobody's taking a bow to the face or other nether regions.
I've taken a couple of releases to the face, and definitely that's bad enough. I couldn't imagine taking a full flex limb to the face. I'd rather not.
I think I've caught my nose a couple times. I've been shot in the ass.
There you go.
Yeah. Yay for kids. Yeah, so that's what I do on Arrow. The other part of my job is I have an archery school, Lykopis Archery, in Vancouver, and we teach. We're the only school, I believe, we're the only school that teaches what we teach, which we've broken down into something we call the 4 disciplines. And in order to teach those 4 things, when Arrow is on hiatus, which is 2 months of the year, I head over to Europe and Asia, and I meet with a lot of academics and archers, and we discuss the techniques, and I try to learn as much as I can, and I visit museums, and I film artifacts, and I ride a lot of trains because I hate planes, and I ride a lot of ferries, and I meet some very, very awesome people. Actually, I just made a post. I think archery is something other than Australia. It's all over the world, right? It's developed all over the world, and we have a huge resurgence in archery, especially a huge resurgence in traditional archery or instinctual archery. And there is a large international community, traditional archers. And when we compete, we wear costumes, and I am somewhat of a political person, and I found myself walking down the street in Warsaw this year after a mounted archery competition with now friend Jagoda. She works with AMM Archery in Poland. They're a mounted archery school. And my personal hero, Irina from Malaysia, she's a mounted archer, and she's like 5'2". And Jagoda is a Catholic, Marina is a Muslim, and I am a Stoic, and we were just like talking about archery, and we were just laughing. And it, to me, I suddenly just had this moment where I was like, this is awesome. It's a stick, it's a string, and it's another stick, but here we are. And yeah, that rounds out my job pretty well.
No, I mean, I definitely know what you mean. It's probably not nearly that varied of a community, but I recently got back from a 3D archery competition out in Utah, and
I think I know okay, sorry.
Total Archery Challenge, out in Snowbird, and it was amazing, and it's it's that same feeling of you go out there and you're different people from different backgrounds, and like I said, probably not quite as varied as you had out there, but it's just archery bringing hundreds of people together, and you're there for that, and other things don't matter for that time, and it's a really exciting thing. But
I mean, we do end up talking. Of course, politics come up, given the countries that we're from, but almost every experience I've ever had, if there's been a cultural difference, rather than it becoming like a headbutting incident, as we are more prone to do in North America, I find, than in Europe. there's the opportunity has been explain to me about your religion or your political belief. There's never like a you're wrong. And I find most of the archers that I've met internationally, both North America, South America, Europe, and Asia, that we all kind of tend to lean on the Robin Hood aspect of it. We all, no matter what religion we might have or whatever, we all still kind of tend to lean towards the, rob from the rich and give to the poor and do the right thing.
So you did talk a little bit about the traveling you've done and learning different forms of archery, and so you've really gone all over the world to kind of expand your knowledge of, as you said, traditional or instinctual archery. What are some of the highlights of that? What are some of the more fun types of archery you've done, or some of the more interesting ones?
If anybody's listening, anybody I know is listening to this podcast, they know what the next two words are going to be. Turkey and Finland. Turkey is actually, both those countries are. I would consider them other homes along with Canada. Turkey, my first year when I went, which was 5 years ago now. Turkey was my first stop, and I have a big interest in Roman history as well. So it seemed fitting that Istanbul would be my first stop. It covering a lot of Roman history as well as having a huge amount of archery. I was introduced to a fellow named Murat Özveri, and there is a traditional archery club, Tirandaz. And I had a friend there, my friend Bora. He was my guide. There's a word in Turkish, it's kardeş, and it means like brother, friend, family. And Bora is definitely, he's my brother. So yeah, I was introduced to this whole sort of new world, because most of my research had been centered around first libraries and then the internet, and there's so much information flying around. So I was introduced to this world of archers that do research and so on and so forth, and I just fell in love with Istanbul and the people in Turkey. The Western media, the depiction sometimes is very incorrect. Turkey has got to be one of the friendliest and most amazing countries I have ever been to. And if I had an opportunity to move there, I would move there lickety-split. But arrow is, yeah. Finland is, again, the people are incredibly friendly, and friendly just seems so simple. They're just very kind people. Now, Finland is different from Turkey because it's got a much lower population, and the people are much more connected to the land. I encourage you to look up the Finnish law of all men, and again, if I had the opportunity to move to Finland, I would. The bow in Finland that drew me there is an incredibly unique. It's a composite bow. It's a composite bow out of two woods. Most of my research, I would say that this is the bow that I can find the least information on. It's out there. It's definitely out there. My connection in Finland is Markus Leppola, and if you ever have an opportunity to meet and talk to a Finn, I highly encourage it. Their sense of humor is, there's no words in English to actually describe a Finn's sense of humor. And it's not just Marcus, although Marcus is on the far end of, he's going to laugh if he hears this. And Marcus was writing his thesis on this 2-wood bow. So it took me a while to find him. And I ended up in Finland on a fluke. I got jammed up in Budapest my first year. The flight I was supposed to be going home on, as flights do, they were like, oh, we have no room for you. I'm like, oh, great. That's awesome. So my agent rerouted me through Finland, and I got into the airport, and the airport in Helsinki is amazing. And I was like, and I had something insane, like a 6-beer layover. So I started to research, like, Finland's really cold. Does it actually have a bow that works in the cold? Because, the only bows I really knew about at that time that worked in ultra cold were the ones you find in Canada, in northern Canada, like in Nunavut or the Northwest Territories or Yukon, and they're a cable-backed bow. They have sinew wrapped around them, like yards and yards of sinew, and there was this 2-wood bow, and then I was like in the airport. I think I was on beer number 4, and I was like, "This is cool." And I contacted Marcus, and next thing you know, I was going there, and he was showing. We went to this little island, and I was just like, "I love this country." So it's very much like British Columbia, where I am in Canada. So and they've got a huge hunting culture. So yeah, and.
So with with these different types of bows, do you see a lot of difference in the styles of archery, what they're used for? Just what are some of the differences you see? Because a lot of the time, I feel like you talk to someone like me, and I'm like, okay, you got recurves, you got longbows, but shooting a trad bow. I don't. What are some of the differences you see between cultures as far as shooting?
Well, that's a bit more. It's a difficult question to answer because everybody has a different idea, and it's really hard to sort of get everyone. It's impossible to get everyone on board. Sort of the horse bow is a good example. We don't call I say this all the time. You don't call a sword that you use from horseback a horse sword. The horse is not using the sword. You don't call a bow used from horseback a horse bow. I refer to them as Asiatic Composite bows because that is where they come from and that is what they are. And not all ACBs are used from horseback. There was a lot of cultures who did both foot and horse. So to take any bow that is an Asiatic Composite, like a Turkish bow or Mongolian bow, and just blanket it as a horse bow, yes, there's always everybody has a sort of a different definition. So what we try to stick to is what I have gleaned from meeting multiple people who research archery for a living. Either they're academics or they're like myself and they're independent researchers or they're experimental archaeologists or et cetera, et cetera. It's important on that level when you're coming from a school to have classifications so people can understand. And you can't be as rigid as to say these things don't overlap. That's why I prefer the term Asiatic Composite over horse bow, because then we have Asiatic Composite horse bow and foot bow. So it starts to get complicated. It's just like in America, in the United States, you guys call a flat bow a longbow, right? But I hesitate to say it's not. But in a way, it's not. They're not long. They're not like 6 feet long. And the distinctual thing of a longbow is that it has a D shape or a lozenge shape on the crosscut, or they're round, right? And they're usually they are self bows. They're one piece of wood, with or without horn nocks, and the whole bow flexes when you draw it. Unlike your American longbow, we say flat bow because using longbow, then you end up with English longbow, and then the Welsh people get pissed off, and then but they're made in Spain, so you see there's a lot of complication there. But you take the American flat bow, or the AFB, that's what we call it at Lykopis, and that is a bow rooted in hunting, so it is shot different than, say, an Asiatic Composite or even a longbow. There's a different method and a discipline to shooting that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think it does.
It's a muddy water, and the reason I sort of because I have a school, it's important that we have some guidelines so people don't get confused. That's why we say American flat bow over American longbow, or a new one I recently heard the other day, American semi-Indian longbow, which
that's a bit of a mouthful,
right? Like if I'm ever going to say that on camera, I'm going to really mess that one up.
So speaking of your school, you touched on a little bit earlier. You're saying there was four
disciplines.
Four disciplines that you teach. Tell me a little bit more about those 4 disciplines.
So we break it, like I said, we break it down into 4, and by no means is this sort of like an accepted academic terminology, but again, this is something that I have come up with just in talking to academics, how we break them down. So we start with the lithic bows, which are the Paleolithic and the Mesolithic bows. So those would have been the bows for lack of a better term, cave people would have used. Probably the bows in this artwork in Spain. I got to see that last year. That's why it's there. That is one of the oldest artworks depicting archery, and that's in Castellón in Spain. So yeah, that's like the Houma bow, which is the bow you find in the National Museum in Denmark. It's the oldest bow in the world. And it's a really, I'm going to totally admit this. First time I saw it, I was like, I got all like teary eyed and stuff. And this guy walked by and is like, it's okay. The animal's been dead for a long time.
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, what? And then I realized, like, right next to the Houma bow, this is how focused I get when I travel, is this massive Paleolithic elk with like these, like, you know, we're talking about the thing, something the size of a large vehicle, you know.
Oh, I know. I'm going into Idaho in about 3 weeks to chase elk.
Right. So you know what I'm talking about. And I'm just like, this is like a monster elk. You know, of course, the first thing I look at when I look at the statue or at the skeleton is like, that would have tasted really good. But he was all like, it's okay. And I'm like, that's how focused I was at looking at this bow. I've seen it now 4 times. They actually let me pick up it, like bring a chair in and just stare at it for hours, just looking at all the difference of it. So there's the Houma bow. There's a lot of other lithic bows. There's something called the Stellmore bow, which unfortunately we don't have anymore due to World War II and a whole lot of bombing. There's Etsy's bow in Bolzano in Italy, which is a different shape from the Houma bow, and that's a Mesolithic bow or a Copper Age bow. So we don't know how or the technique that they use to shoot these bows. I can tell you that Etsy, the museum, they have a really cool interactive device. Do you know who Etsy is? Etsy?
I do not.
He's like this cave dude found in the 80s, and he's frozen in the Alps, and some hikers found him, and they were like, oh, a lost hiker. They stole some of his stuff, and then they reported him to the police. Yeah, of course, right. They reported him to the police, and then the police went up, and they're like, oh, no, call the scientists. And everybody from Austria came, and Italy came, and there was a bit of an argument about who he belonged to. Italy got him. There's a fantastic museum. He was, just look him up. Look him up. It's O with the 2 dots on the top, TZI. And they recently found out that his last meal was bacon. But at the museum, there's
kind of how we all hope to go, right?
That is exactly what I thought. I'm with you. I'm dying. There's an arrow in my shoulder, and I think I'm bleeding out. Yep. Bacon. I am so with you there, brother. So he was mummified. And they have an interactive table where you can sort of put your hands on the skeleton, like he kind of died like this, and you can zoom in on the different parts of his body. So I went into this area of his body, and he does have something called ossicromiale, which is they say it's a deformity. I say it's a superhero thing that happens to your it happens to your bones inside here. So yeah, we teach that's the lithics. We just call those the lithic bows. And again, we know that because Otzi has ossicromiale, we know that he was probably shooting from the time he was young. The style of the technique, we don't know. We'll never know until we can time travel. The next discipline we teach is flat bow, American flat bow. So, you know, again, it's indigenous to North America, this sort of low profile rectangular cross-section shape and a static handle. So just the limbs are moving like a lever. The handle does not move. And the next one is longbow, which is broken down into, well, with flat bow, we do know the style. We do know sort of how they're shot from, because obviously we still have a whole bunch of First Nations people who are shooting bows and arrows. We also have Ishi from Saxton Pope and his research on Ishi and photographs of how Ishi shot and the different draws he used. And it's sort of a matter, that's always what interests me about the research is it's a mystery, right? You're trying to solve this stuff, whether through its experimental archaeology or going to the World Indigenous Games and meeting with people and looking how they're shooting, et cetera, et cetera. So we teach that the flat bow is the majority. It was designed for and is still used for, and I would say it is still the best bow for hunting. The way you shoot it at a cant, you can definitely hide behind a tree, and it's something that we do as an example during class. We get a student to be a tree and another student to be a deer, and then I'm like, can you see me? That kind of stuff. So after flat bow, we have the longbow, which we break down into 3 different types of bow: the Viking longbow, the war bow, which is 80-pound draw plus, and the Victorian longbow.
So an 80-pound draw traditional. This is not a compound bow with a nice let off and back wall. This is
no training wheels.
Man, I can't even imagine trying to shoot one of those.
Well, that's just that, again, that's part of what we teach. So the method for teaching or the method for shooting a war bow, again, that's something that is included in my travels. So this year I was in the Netherlands meeting with a fellow named Chris. And he shoots war bows. He shoots all kinds of war bows. So longbow war bows and Asiatic Composite war bows. See, and again, that's where we're sort of breaking into terms. When people say war bow, we need to establish what does that mean. A lot of people like to think war bows solely belong to the longbow category. War of the Roses, the bows that came off the Merry Rose, 100 Years' War. But sort of what we go with is anything over 80 pounds is something that's going to penetrate armor and kill you.
I'd say so.
So that becomes a war bow. This year, when I was in the Netherlands with Chris, we drove through Belgium to France, and we went to Crécy and Azincourt, which are 2 battles from the 100 Years' War. The Band of Brothers speech comes from Azincourt, from Shakespeare's Henry. So when I was at Crécy, I got to shoot 48-pound longbow that was given to me by a fellow named Lee Ankers, Heritage Longbows in the UK, and it was really cool because here I am shooting on the actual battlefield a longbow that is not a war bow. It is only 48 pounds, but Chris, at the same time, we were filming and he was showing me his technique for drawing the war bow. Now, I had a vehicular collision a few years ago, so I'm pushing it at 60 pounds. But I'm willing to try the technique with a practice riser that has surgical tubing on it. So that's something our school will do, is we're hoping to bring Chris out in February to teach us this technique. So that would be the war bow. There you go. The Viking longbow is we have a fellow on staff, Stephen Fox, and he wrote his thesis on Irish Viking longbows, the Ballandary bow in Ireland, which I went to see last year. Stephen was able to get me into the museum and meet the curator, and we did some filming. Stephen now lives here in Canada, and I have brought him from Ireland, and he works with me and Arrow. But also we brought him here a few years ago to teach an entire class on building a Viking longbow, like basically. So that's something we teach us that's part of those disciplines. So when you do each discipline, you have the opportunity to learn to build everything that goes around the bow, the arrows, the arrowhead, the fletching, the quiver, the armor, the clothing. So Victorian longbow, we have had young women be like, oh my God, the dresses. But the cool thing about the dresses and the tailcoats that the men wore is some of them had hidden quivers in them. Like I have a tailcoat that I've made that it has a hidden quiver in the tail, and on the sleeve is a leather bracer that can be hidden by folding a piece of cloth over. So, I'm out on the archery range. Oh, Pasha, I need to go for tea. Quick, let me hide all this stuff and go and look like a normal person when secretly I am an assassin.
I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that.
Right? Right? So that's the longbow, and the last discipline we teach is the Asiatic Composite, and we are hoping to branch out into a mounted archery school in the near future, working with, again, the folks in Poland at AMM and bring them over here to teach a clinic and then train our instructors to be able to teach.
On that note, let's take a quick moment to hear a word from one of my partners. Hey y'all, as hunters, we are constantly on the move. Whether it's a scouting trip, heading to the range, training for the hunt, or searching for sheds, providing the fuel to sustain this high-intensity lifestyle requires top-quality food options, and you shouldn't have to compromise the quality of your nutrition when you're on the go. Rugged Meats is here to provide superior nutrition anywhere or anytime, no matter what the hunt is throwing at you. Their snack sticks are made from 100% free-range, wild-caught, forest-raised boar, and all products are guaranteed to be free of any added nitrates, MSG, and gluten. Plus, they come in several different flavors and options so you can find the best way to power your pursuit. Check out the Rugged Meats website and get 10% off all purchases from Rugged Meats by visiting our partners page at livingcountryinthecity.com/partners.
So with all of these different types of archery and bows that you've experienced and learned about, if somebody came to you and said, all right, you've got to pick, you are only allowed to shoot one bow, one type of bow, one type of archery for the rest of your life, you have to make the choice, what would it be? Arrow to your head.
Arrow to my head, not to my knee. Arrow to my head. That would, that's not a fair question. I plead the fifth. I don't want to answer that question.
Well, maybe how about a top three then? If,
the reason I say it's an unfair question is it depends. What am I doing with this? Is this post-apocalyptic world where I'm being asked to choose a bow? Is this like a hunting situation? Am I in a survivalist situation? I think I would probably choose the Houma, just because of the physics of that bow are incredible. I hate it. I don't like it when people refer to that the Houma bow as a primitive bow, because there is absolutely nothing primitive about it. You take the Houma compared to a longbow, and a longbow is a primitive bow. I think longbow would be the one I wouldn't choose.
Okay. Tell us again a little more about the construction of the Houma.
So when you have a bow, the part that faces you is called the belly, and the part that faces your target is called the back. I was kind of expecting from pictures of the Houma it to be a little bit more like a flat bow, to have that like very rectangular sort of cross section to it, but it's not. And when you look at a longbow as well, a longbow, the belly is usually rounded and the back is flat, right? That's what that cross section is what gives the longbow its definitive sort of longbow shape. The Houma is rounded at the back and flat on the belly. And I'm trying to figure out if it's reaction wood that they've used, that's been used. It is elm. I can explain what reaction wood is in a minute if you want. Or if it's just a piece of elm, like where's the heartwood, where is the sapwood on the bow? Is the sapwood on the belly? And the heartwood is on the back, or is it the other way around, like a longbow where the sapwood or the heartwood is on the belly and the sapwood is on the back? Like if you look at a longbow, you look at depictions of medieval longbows or the bows off the Mary Rose. They're made out of yew. There's a distinct difference in coloration from the sap and the heartwood. So
what exactly? I mean, what's the difference between, say, the sap and the heartwood?
So if you've ever eaten a carrot or cut a carrot in half crosswise, you can see there's that piece in the middle that's actually really sweet, tastes really good. That's the best part of the carrot. And then there's that kind of the coarser sort of outside part. So if you think of a tree, the heartwood is that sweet piece in the middle, and the sapwood is the stuff around the outside. It's called sapwood because that's where the sap travels through, right? So the heartwood is what allows the tree to flex, and the sapwood is what keeps it all together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
keeps it from just flopping over.
Keeps it from flopping over or whipping and bending too much, mm-hmm. right? And each tree has each tree has a different kind of interior heartwood sapwood combination. Some are very flexy, some are not. Some are too flexy, that some are meant to, like you take a cedar tree on the Pacific coast here, and, that tree really needs to flex because there's some strong winds going on. But cedar doesn't exactly make a great bow sometimes because it is very flexy, right? So you take yew wood from the yew tree, and all of the longbows off the Mary Rose came from Spain, Spanish yew wood. And as I said, there's a distinct different color. And the sapwood and the heartwood are put the way they are back and belly, because the heartwood does not, when you bend the bow, heartwood doesn't want to come under compression, right? It doesn't want to, which is why it's inside the tree. And the sapwood doesn't want to come under tension, which is why it's on the outside of the tree. So when you bend that, you're creating all of that energy, that stored energy. We refer to it as the dynamic inside of the bow. Now, when you take a bow made with reaction wood, usually it goes the other way around. The heartwood is on the back, and the sapwood is on the belly, and that's sort of like a gray area of research at this point for me. I haven't quite got into that very much, which is why I would like to know where the heart and sapwood are located on the Houma guard bow. Is it which way is it? Same with Etsy's bow, actually, because Etsy's bow is unfinished as far as we can tell. It's still got little knife nick marks in it. So again, it's something that when I was looking at Etsy's bow, it's shaped like a round bow. It's a D shape. It's round and flat. But I don't think it wasn't strung, so I don't know. That one's kind of I don't know. Some people are out in the. We're still trying to figure that out. That one's out in the field there right now. But the use of reaction wood is also an important thing. So you find reaction wood in the Finn Ugric bows in Finland and Siberia.
Gotcha. There's definitely a lot that you can do with the same materials, just slightly adjusting shape and placement, and it can really
absolutely
make a difference in how the bow flexes and how it's used and all of that. So okay, as we're kind of coming close on time, one thing I always like to end with is a little maybe encouragement. You know, my podcast is kind of directed at people that are very new to this stuff, and or maybe just haven't been exposed to it a whole lot. So if what would you say to somebody that's interested in getting into archery or bow hunting or any of this, but they feel like, I just don't even know where to start, or I'm intimidated by this, there's just too much to learn? What would you say to those people?
Archery is super diverse, and that is both the beauty of it as well as that sort of overwhelming feeling. You have, as I said, Australia is the only place that never developed their own indigenous archery because they didn't really have to. So I would say to someone new there is no wrong type of archery. There's no wrong way to do archery. Well, there is. The way we teach it, it's a wrong way if you are in pain. That is the wrong way. We at Lykopis, and myself personally, we embrace sort of part of the Kyoto, the Japanese archery aspect of it, of the Zen aspect, the focus and the form first, and then when that comes, then we're going to teach you to instinctually aim. So we don't actually teach aiming per se. We teach it instinctually, that it's just going to come naturally. So we teach form first. Now, some people, archers will say, oh, that's just do whatever makes you comfortable, just pull the string and go and let the arrow go and that's good. So, you know, we have some of my students go to other archery ranges, and the way we teach, the method we teach, which we call the forward lift and draw, or the FLD method, other people will come up and say, oh, no, that's wrong, it has to be like this, and this is, to me, that can be super intimidating. So if you go to a range and you want to learn, the best thing to do is find somebody who is a certified coach or a knowledgeable archer. You are probably, most people when they start out, they're going to go to the range, they're going to get taught Olympic style. There's not a lot of schools out there, I don't think, that put in as much research as we do at our school. So, you know, if you want to learn a specific style, you might get some resistance or different ideas. Just keep an open mind is the best thing I can say. But if someone is telling you to do something and it is hurting and they are not listening to you as far as something causing you pain, then you need to walk away from that person and find somebody else. There's lots of really good archery schools all over the world. But just remember that there are so many different styles out there. Don't get stuck. A lot of people go in and they get stuck on the Olympic draw, and that's it for them. Just try to, if you are really interested in archery, it has a almost 70,000 year history. So it's been with us since we were like, throwing a stick at a mastodon is probably a bad idea. Or here comes a saber-toothed tiger. Throw a rock. Just remember that. That's what I mainly try to tell people. Remember the broad history that our sport and our martial art has. It's a sport, it's a hunting tool, it's a martial art. It's pretty diverse. Try and go out there and do as much as you can. Watch YouTube videos. There's lots of good people. There's lots of not so good people. You start to be part of the archery community on Facebook or wherever, and you start to figure out who the people are and who the people aren't. And just like any community, you are going to run into people who are complete dorks, and you're going to run into people who are full of all kinds of information. Just don't be daunted. Just keep trying. Be Katniss Everdeen. Well, they didn't give her any training. Jennifer Lawrence, apparently the story goes, she asked for archery training and they were like, what? Pull the string back. So she went and found the best archer she could, which in most people's mind means an Olympian. But Katniss was a hunter, so she probably would have been better off finding a hunter to show her how to do archery. Right? But that's something that people don't know. You say archery and the number one question I get, Sam, is, so how'd you do at competition?
Oh.
And I'm like, that does not define archery. Now, I do compete in traditional in Turkey, and I did really bad this year. So I love it when people are like, so you're pretty good in competition, Am? Actually, no, I shot a whopping 3 out of 76 this year.
My response was, I walked away with 9 broken arrows and 1 that was cracked. So
I walked away with a super pretty costume and some really beautiful arrows that shot like hell, and I shot like hell. So yeah, don't let people get you stuck on archery as competition. 3D is fun. Go out and have fun. Right eye dominant, left eye dominant, right hand dominant, left eye dominant.
Oh, I'm cross-eye dominant, and it's a
we
pain.
don't, like I said, we don't shoot. We don't teach aiming. We don't teach eye dominance. We let you start, if you're left-handed and you're right eye dominant, let you figure it out. You can shoot both ways, and our school offers you the opportunity to learn ambidextrous, and we encourage everyone to learn it ambidextrous.
So if people wanted to kind of reach out, follow what you're doing, or find out more about the school, where can people find you online?
You can find the school at Lykopis Archery, Lykopis Archery, all one word, .ca. Lykopis means she-wolf in Greek. You can also find us on Facebook at the same thing, Lykopis Archery. You can find me and the interesting, funny, remarkable, stupid, ignorant things that I do sometimes when I'm researching, and all of the fun videos from set and stuff that I'm allowed to show at Epic Archer on Facebook. You can reach me through Epic Archer. That's probably the best place to reach me personally, and you can reach Lykopis either through Facebook online at the webpage, or you can email info@lykopisarchery.ca, and my wonderful manager Stephanie will get back to you.
Fantastic, and I'll make sure to link to all of those and everything we talked about. I'm going to have a list of websites to look up for this episode for sure.
Just don't ask me for spoilers.
Oh, definitely not. My ears are closed on those.
Oh, that's like my number one question. Can you tell me? No, I can't.
I don't want to know.
Really don't ask me.
I want to see it as it comes out. So, but I will definitely list those up on the show notes page at livingcountryinthecity.com/32 for episode 32. Thank you so much.
There are lots of ranges. Sorry, I know you got to go.
No,
I was going to say there are some fantastic ranges in LA. And if you are in LA, I know it's a giant sprawling city, but I strongly recommend, if you are wanting to get into archery, go down to Pasadena Roving Archers.
Yes.
Obviously in Pasadena. That's the second oldest outdoor range in America. So y'all should be proud and go down and support those folks, because they have a bit of a fight on them from some people in the area. But that is one of the oldest ranges, outdoor ranges. So 1928, I think. And the folks down there are fantastic.
No, I definitely, and that's how I was introduced to you, was through some of the folks over there. So I definitely.
Aren't they awesome? I love, every time I'm in LA, I always, my travel agent's like, you can come back on this day. I'm like, no, I need a day to shoot.
Well, next time you're in LA, you'll have to give me a heads up, and maybe I can come out and join you.
That sounds like a challenge.
Oh, I'm gonna break some more arrows.
I'm gonna bring all the bows. All the bows are gonna come.
Well, I will definitely look forward to that then. And thank you so much for hopping on the show with me today. I really appreciate it. And we will have to talk again soon.
No problem. Take it easy, Sam.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right, y'all. That'll do it for episode 32 of Living Country in the City. Hopefully y'all found something in there that possibly piqued your interest and inspired you to dig a little bit deeper into different forms of archery, or maybe it just inspired you to pick up a trad bow for the first time around. Y'all can check out the details on everything we talked about, as well as links to follow Patricia and Lykopis Archery on the show notes page at livingcountryinthecity.com/32. Make sure y'all are subscribing, as I've got some very exciting new guests coming up over the next few podcasts, and don't forget to leave that rating and review on iTunes or Stitcher. But in the meantime, keep it country, y'all.
Thank y'all for listening to Living Country in the City. Get show notes and check out the blog, product reviews, events, and more at livingcountryinthecity.com.
So they unlocked the door for me so I could pull it for the shot. And 2 hours later, I had kept saying pape and rillage instead of rape and pillage. And right as I finally got it, and, you know, I did get it a couple times, but then I just looked so frustrated on my face. I'm just like, so I finally got it. And some British tourist guy jumped in front of the camera and was like, boo! And